All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Wow, that's loud. Welcome to a special city council meeting of May the 25th, 2025. Madam Clerk, may I please have the roll call?
It is 5:33 p.m. Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Torres Walker. Present. Councilmember Freitas.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rocha. Mayor Bernal.
Here.
I'll note for the record, Mayor Pro Tem Rocha is absent at 5:33 p.m.
All right, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about the fiscal year 2025 through 2027 budget development for the general plan, or excuse me, for the general fund. And if I could please have our city manager, Bessie Scott, intro us into this.
Thank you so much, Mayor and City Council. City Council has requested that several budget models be provided for consideration and discussion. The city manager is requesting that you all consider these 5 budget models and provide direction to staff with regards to which elements to incorporate into a final draft for council to evaluate for adoption. These recommendations include a 1-year budget instead of a biennial budget. This is a start in terms of the conversation that we're going to have tonight, representing several options in the model with baselines that are built on each other. These are just options, and we're looking for you all to give us further direction on things you would like us to review, to explore, and to bring back. As you see later in the options, there are 2 options for furloughs. We recommend no furloughs until we get through a first fiscal year to explore longer-term solutions to stabilize the budget. Finance Director Merchant will go through the models, and then I will go through the mitigation for the models. And thank you to our council member for suggesting to make sure that you all get the impact of the decisions within the spreadsheets.
Good evening. So the city manager and myself are going to kind of tag team it. Sorry, is that better? Okay. We're going to kind of tag team it. I'll kind of go over the base, what each model contains, and then the city manager will go through the mitigation factors in a little bit more detail. And as the city manager mentioned, this isn't a one-size-fits-all. You pick Model 1, you pick Model 2, you pick Model 3. These are what was put together. We're asking council specific direction tonight on these items in the model, what pieces, kind of a menu that you want to include in a budget for consideration. Also, any other additional ideas you might have outside of what's listed in this staff report, because it takes a team to pull this all together and come up with ideas. And again, I just want to reiterate, as the city manager stated, we are recommending just the adoption of a 1-year budget so we can spend some time going through the fiscal year and vet some longer-term fiscal sustainability options as we evaluate the coming cycle. So the plan would be to adopt a 1-year budget for fiscal year 26. If council is amenable, then adopt a 1-year budget for fiscal year 27 as we work on building the model over the next year, and then return to a 2-year budget model depending on how the finances look at that time. So for Model 1, let's see if I can get...
And before the finance director begins, I also want to say that this will give us an opportunity to come back to you all with monthly budget reports to see what our revenue forecasts are as we go, as we might be able to pivot and adjust in year 2 based on what comes into the city. Also, we're asking for specific decisions tonight because it will take time to implement the changes. It's not just a full stop when you say so on June 24th. We actually need time to go get things in place that we decide today.
Sorry, I know this doesn't all kind of fit on the screen. It's a lot of information to look at. So for Model 1, this is, we started with a baseline model in January that we brought to City Council, and we listed several mitigation factors that we had built into the budget. We went further, reviewed, deep dive into the budget, met with departments, and came up with some additional reductions. So on the baseline model that was presented in January and now further updated, that so far builds in, let me get to the table here, about $10.4 million in budget reductions in fiscal year 26, and then $11.2 million in budget reductions in fiscal year 27. So that is listed on page 10 of the staff report, everything that is built into these models so far. And then when we get to the end of the meeting, of course, we're going to be asking council concurrence with these items, whether to maintain them in the budget or explore other options. And in Model 1, we have revenues of almost $95 million in fiscal year 25, expenditures of $109.8 million in fiscal year 26. There's a deficit spending of $14,827,115. We still meet the assigned reserve by having 24.03% unassigned reserve, but when you look into fiscal year 27, that deficit spending increases to $16.4 million, and we drop below the 20% assigned reserve fund balance. And as outlined in the table, we're over our established fund balance threshold by $17 million approximately in fiscal year 25. We're over the fund balance threshold by $3.8 million in fiscal year 26, but then we're under the fund balance threshold by $12.7 million in fiscal year 27. We have not shown any budget stabilization transfer. We wanted to represent to the City Council and to the public what the actual true deficit is, meaning how much in expenditures we're spending over our revenues that are coming in. And just as a refresher for City Council, we had to reduce sales tax revenues by over $1 million each year. We had the PG&E franchise fees. We kind of got a hit on that. So revenues are remaining really flat for the next 2 years at this point. However, the market is very volatile right now, depending on what's going on with the administration. So we really don't know the impact to all cities going forward over the next year, which is one reason we really want to only adopt a one-year budget and see how the economy, plus how it specifically impacts the city of Antioch over the next year. So with that, I'll turn it over to the city manager to further explain some mitigation measures and the impacts of those that are in Model 1.
Thanks so much. Okay, so the additional reductions to this baseline Model 1 includes that the finance department would freeze one business license representative position. The impact would be that business license processing may take longer. Other finance staff will need to assist with the workload. Again, finance freezing one accounting specialist 2 position. This position assists with accounting, payables, and some payroll. Other finance staff will need to assist with workload. Next up is Public Works. Reallocated an engineering technician in Public Works to the water and sewer funds. This position will assist in the development of capital improvement projects and the drafting engineering specification, documents, and staff reports. Community Development, savings from removing one code enforcement officer position and adding 2 new promotional levels for community engagement, CEOs in community development, code enforcement officers, sorry. The division needs more supervisory levels, and this is a way to get parity across other divisions as well. City manager, removing a second assistant city manager position, which will just increase workload and then not help with policy briefings, metrics, and evaluations, as well as strategic planning. Next up, we're removing part-time help from both the city manager's budget as well as city council. The office of the city manager will no longer have part-time assistants when needed for special projects, and the mayor and the city council will no longer have part-time assistants when needed for their individual initiatives and special projects. And then citywide there's an option to adjust our library contributions. Antioch library contributions are paid for by the city, and they include option with respect to hours of operation and the cost associated with keeping a certain number of hours, the estimated cost of leasing a new self-checkout equipment, and related equipment and maintenance. The city can choose to increase or decrease every year its library contribution, and we sign a contract every year with a menu of options. You're looking at me. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, are you going to want questions on each model as we go through, or wait till the very, very end?
It is the council's pleasure. Oh, you would like to do that?
I guess my question would be, then are we gonna take public comment on every model before we discuss
You want to
it?
do that?
Or just go full to the end and then do that?
The clerk is,
So I have a lot of speaker cards here, but they didn't really put what they wanted to speak on, so
okay.
we can,
It's only one item.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, if
Yeah,
they were
we-
gonna break it
maybe-
up by module.
We have one agenda item, so my recommendation, especially since the cards are not specific and it would be difficult to administer, is just to take public comment all at once. So the suggestion would be that, as a suggestion to proceed, you ask your questions of staff in relation to each model. That way, it tees up the issues that you see and that staff has identified, and then that will allow the public to have the benefit of that discussion before they come up and present to you. So that is a suggestion.
So, again, we have, is it 5 different models? If we're gonna go through each model and ask questions about each model, the public should be able to have public comment on each model. Because not everybody is here to talk about every budget example.
It's at the council's pleasure. You could do it that way. I think the only issue is that we have several speaker cards, and so we're not going to be able to know how, the speakers may not have given the clerk that level of detail, but I'm sure we can figure out a way to handle that.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I think that, have the council ask questions per model, go through, and then it's open to the public, and the public will have had the opportunity to hear some of the questions in the dialogue, and we can always go back to any item on the agenda.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. Is that okay, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure we frame the question. And so, beginning on the front page, we talk about what we have already cut out of the budget. And in fiscal year '26, it's $10.4 million. In fiscal '27, it's $11.2 million. So the council has already reduced the budget by approximately $22.6 million.
Well, this is what the city manager, myself, and departments proposed. City council has not yet given consensus to whether.
No, I
they're-
understand,
Yeah.
just trying to frame the question.
Yes.
And then looking at Model 1, for fiscal year '26, we have a deficit of $14.8 million, and in '27, $16.2 million. Collectively, that's a $54 million deficit. That somehow in the discussion, a lot of people are not looking at, why is the council taking these actions? We're taking the actions because $54 million budget deficit is what this council has got to be facing and making decisions on. So, and I'll defer to the city manager, it may be helpful, and particularly for the community, as we go down the list, to ask questions such as, on page 2, we have 2 items on the finance department. I'm in agreement with both of them, but an issue for me that we discuss is succession planning. And there's no allocation here with how to achieve that. We hope Don Merchant lives long, lives healthy, and continues working for several years, but she really is the only person in this entire city that understands and has prepared budgets for the last 20 years? And so I think we really need to be very serious about bringing somebody on board and training that individual for succession planning. So that's just one of the things I'm raising. Under Public Works, so I want to make sure I understand on the reallocation. So we're taking it from a general fund and specifically putting the engineering technician in the water and sewer funds, or just water?
It would be split between the water and sewer fund because as the Public Works Director, when we spoke to him about it, it would be assisting with capital improvement projects and draft engineering related to water and sewer projects.
Okay, from my perspective, I agree with that. I agree with eliminating the assistant city manager position. I agree with, on the third page 3, eliminating the part-time help for the city manager's office. With regards to the adjusting library contribution, is the $62,899 is,
I just want to be clear, it's not really that we're reducing the hours. What happened is they gave us a preliminary invoice, how much our standard hours were going to be, and they gave us the wrong amount.
Is
So they
this-
sent us a new invoice, so, and that happened after we did the baseline. So we reduced the budget to be the actual. However,
That's corrected.
each year with the contract, they do ask us if we want additional hours, it's going to cost more money. So if you wanted to build money back in, we could request them to provide additional hours. But this just reduces the budget from what they initially gave us to maintain the standard hours that the city's been maintaining for
so
several
this would
years.
be the status quo?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm agreeable with that. And removing the part-time assistant for city council, I agree with that. So, I don't know if there's disagreement with city council on these items, but I think staff and the public needs to hear where we're at on the issue.
Any other comments from council?
No, I'm in agreement with the Model 1.
Oh, first, I want to just thank staff and the city manager for, even without direction from the council, doing the best that they can to bring down the deficit all on their own with little to no direction from us. Because I know that took a lot of work to do. And every department has had a need since I came to this council, and to ask them to cut even further, to even have ideas on how to cut further to balance their budget to meet the needs of the public. Just want to first thank y'all for that. Also, I must have misunderstood it, because when I saw removal of council part-time people, I thought we already voted to do that, but Councilmember Freitas reminded me that we voted to eliminate the district funding. So I absolutely don't have a problem with that, since I never utilized a part-time person in the first place. But as for right now, I think that's one of the items I agree with from removing from Model 1.
On the community development, code enforcement officer, how many code enforcement officers do we currently have?
We're budgeted for 10.
We are budgeted for 10. I'm not quite sure I think it might be 6 that are filled right now, I believe.
So this proposal would be to go to 9 and then add?
Yes, it will be for 10, go to 9, to have supervisory steps.
Okay. Yeah, besides that, I don't have any other questions. Just want to make sure that the library hours were going to remain status quo. And then as far as us agreeing or disagreeing on everything, I think I'd like to have us all make comments first, and then after public comment, then have a discussion about maybe further things that we'd be talking about. So I'm good to move on to Model 2. Thank you.
Okay, so next for review will be Model 2. Let me get that up on the screen. Okay, sorry again that this does cut off. The revenues remain the same with Model 2. And what Model 2 does, as the city manager stated, each model builds upon the prior model. So it incorporates the savings in Model 1, and then it adds some additional. So all our revenues are the same each year. But we've reduced our expenditures down to $108.4 million, and then $111.5 million in fiscal year '27. The deficit in fiscal year '26 is $13,500,977. And then in fiscal year '27 is $15,078,585. At the bottom of that table, you can see that in order for fiscal year '26, we exceed the 20% reserve by $5,153,149. However, we are below the 20% reserve by $10,033,707 in fiscal year '27. Again, the budget stabilization fund is not shown in this so that you can see the deficit under Model 2. Model 2 incorporates a total of $11,769,027 in total reductions. So that's adding on to the $10.4 million in Model 1, and then $12,648,455 in fiscal year '27, which is adding on to the 11.2 for Model 1. I will turn it over to the city manager to discuss the measures that were added.
Thanks so much. So for Model 2, the Department of Mitigation, Public Safety and Community Resources, the mitigation is to freeze a community engagement coordinator position. The impact is that the public safety manager will have to take on the duties under this position in addition to their duties. 2, the Cal VIP grant is contingent upon having this position filled, and the city will need to negotiate an exemption to this requirement. For Public Works, the next 4, freeze administrative analyst position. The existing administrative staff will continue to perform additional duties intended to be performed by this position. Freeze senior engineer position, which is different than the assistant engineer, city engineer position, which is going to be out for recruitment. An engineer to perform traffic engineer duties will not be hired, and consultants may have to continue to be utilized to perform this work, which may result in reduced or no general fund savings. Freeze assistant engineer position. An engineer to review development plans will not be hired, and consultants may have to continue to be utilized to perform this work, resulting in reduced or no general fund savings. Reducing landscape expenditures by $1 million in each fiscal year. Reducing landscape expenditures by this much will result in the following implications. Playground repairs will not occur. Preventative tree maintenance will not occur. We will need to shut off water to landscape in some areas. Sign repairs will not occur. Vandalism and accident repairs will not be made. We'll need to close bathrooms at some parks. Dead or missing plants will not be replaced, causing landscape to look barren. Irrigation controllers will not be repaired or replaced, and sound wall repairs will not be made.
All right. Any questions or comments from council? Yes. Mr. Freitas.
So on the public safety and community resources, you say freeze. Why don't we just delete it?
That it's a part of the grant to have the position. It's half funded by the grant, half funded by the general fund.
Even if there's nobody in the position?
Yes.
Well, as the city manager stated, they would have to talk to the grant.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So under Public Works, the freezing senior engineer position and freezing the assistant engineer position. Frankly, I have always been an advocate of hiring city staff.
Mm-hmm.
So the question that you may need to go back to answer the question is, what is the difference between us hiring the 2 position versus consultant services position? I suspect the consultant services can actually be very expensive for us, and I would much prefer to have our own staff in position.
Yeah, and the way this budget is actually built in the baseline is that the consultant services are taken away, the positions are filled. Then in Model 2, it's freezing those, and existing staff would have to absorb the work of these positions. And so that's why there's a notation. If something happens, there's a backlog, a big project comes up, we may ultimately have to hire a consultant, and then you lose some of the savings from having the position frozen.
So can you maybe take a look in the last fiscal year or the last 2 fiscal years and let us know what that looks like? When we have to go out, I mean, are we having that much development happening in the city of Antioch that would require, these duties and responsibilities?
Sure, we can also ask if you would like some information now. Sure. Our Public Works Director is here.
He's hiding,
I was looking for you, sir.
and I think this is
Totally.
not Easter.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Sorry, my walk up, I kind of forgot what you wanted me for.
So the question is, you know, my preference on these two positions is to freeze the senior engineer and freeze the assistant engineer position. And when there's a need for the work to be done, that we contract without consultant services. My bias is always to hire permanent employees in the department. And so what's the difference between salary, benefits, and overhead versus hiring the outside consultants?
In general, the concept is on the short term, I believe that the consultant is going to be more expensive. In the long term, a full-time employee might cost the city more. As a city, yeah, city workers are better than contracted employees. They're going to care more. Typically, I see them do a better job. They're typically rooted, and they provide just a better service to us. Money-wise, like I said, I think that up front, you're going to see that you're going to pay consultants more. You can bring in some people. We could sure use, to increase salaries to entice more people to come here. That can be an issue sometimes. But in terms of cost, probably up front, it would be more expensive with the consultants. As for us, as we talk about things such as succession planning and things, yeah, it's vital to get people in these positions. Currently, there's nobody within the development engineering. It's me, Anna Davis, and then a consultant. That's what we have for traffic engineering as well as develop engineering, which we've been doing, which we're going to continue to do, which this budget shows us doing the same way we've been doing for the last 2 years with little or no staff.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we refer this back to city staff to take a look at this, and my bias is to hire permanent staff.
Before you sit down, Scott, on the same item, so it shows freezing senior engineer position saves $46,000, probably Don and Scott. Why isn't that, if you're freezing a full position, why is that number so small?
This one senior engineer position is split among multiple funds.
So this is the general fund cost?
Yes.
Got it, okay.
That's the same savings you see in that administrative analyst position. That's funded 10% by the general fund, and it's listed to be frozen.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could continue. Under Public Works, reducing landscape expenditure by $1 million, I want to be very clear, I absolutely will not agree to this. City of Antioch experienced this in the late 1980s, 1990s, and it was a miserable failure. Parks were closed, landscaping destroyed, and we had to turn around. The community suffered, and we ended up paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to replace this. It was the city manager and mayor who was very upset that the citizens of Antioch did not vote for the lighting and landscaping district, and in some respects, this was retaliation. That's my opinion. And so, from my thought, the way the city looks is important for economic development. It's important, for the community to be engaged in, in what is happening. And I don't want people to enter our city and see us, all the plants dying, grass dying, and maybe 5-10 years later we'll be able to replace it. That's not what we need to do. So as one council member, I am completely and totally opposed to eliminating our $1 million from landscaping for the next 2 fiscal years.
Any other comments from council?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with Councilmember Freitas in regards to reducing lighting, landscaping expenditures. That one was of concern to me, and really, we need to take a hard look at that, because I don't want to eliminate that budget as well.
Okay.
So the freezing of the community engagement coordinator position, I guess the real question is, if the city doesn't go out for cohort 5 round of CalVIP, we will be leaving a little over the potential of $6 million on the table. from the state to continue to reduce violence using community-based strategies. And so you actually do have to engage the state, whatever model is being proposed for cohort 5. If you don't incorporate the community engagement position, then we're not held to it, but we're held to it until this cycle ends. But in the next model that you present to the state, what you could do is not include a community engagement person in that model. But it also depends on what type of model the state want to see the city implement. So just wanted to lay that out.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Also, this is just an option, and so it's really helpful, and we would actually request to work with you on the next model, and so, yeah.
I always agree with staff over consultants. Consultants often cost more than staff. I mean, at what we pay consultants, we should be paying staff anyway. And so I think if we opt for consultants in lieu of staff, it will cost us more than just having staff in these positions. And I mean, reducing landscape expenditures, I mean, I'm just laughing to think about it, and it's because I've been advocating for better landscaping from 10th Street to the freeway for a very long time, and our landscape has been getting better, and I think it's because Public Works has staffed up that a lot of attention could be spread throughout the city, and so in District 1, we don't have to feel abandoned, and so I also don't agree with this reduction.
All right, and then just related to the same item, the reducing the landscaping, to me, the thing that stood out was just the liability that was created by all of these different things that would not be done, and would, you know, if somebody got a hold of this list, it would be a lawsuit waiting to happen. So I'm in agreement that we should not be reducing the expenditures on landscaping for aesthetic reasons, but especially from the standpoint of public safety. On to Model 3.
I just want to be clear on the engineer positions. We will absolutely bring something back, but nothing is built into the budget for contracts in lieu of the staff. So if you add the staff, that gets added back into the budget. I just want to make it clear. It's not like we put in consultants versus having staff. So just so it's clear to everybody. Before we move on to Model 3.
Well, will you be able to Councilmember Freitas's question, determine how much we've been spending on consultants?
Absolutely. I'm just letting you know, we'll still bring that back. I just wanted to have it be clear for what's in the model.
Yeah, it's an expenditure. I would prefer to spend the money on permanent
Yes,
staff.
completely
versus
understand.
consultant. That's the policy question.
Okay.
All right,
So let me get Model 3 up here on the screen. So Model 3, we have just a little bit more of a condensed model. Under this model, the deficit, excuse me, is $12,559,495 in fiscal year '26, and then $14,465,735 in fiscal year '27. We are above the reserve percentage in fiscal year '26, which you'll see is a recurrent theme across all these models, and then we're under the reserve by just over $8.4 million in fiscal year '27. And with that, the city manager will discuss the mitigation measures built in.
For Model 3, the mitigation includes cost increases. So for finance, we're adding 2 buyer positions for purchasing. This addition is meant to streamline and centralize purchasing and procurement citywide to streamline service delivery. Centralized purchasing and procurement are important because it offers several advantages, including cost savings, improved compliance, and a more streamlined procurement process. This would allow for better strategic efficiency across departments, procedural and operational efficiency, and improved control and management. For the city manager's office, adds 1 grant writer position. The addition of a grant writer is important for a city because they research and identify potential funding sources, prepare grant proposals, and submit them to appropriate agencies or foundations. This will assist the city in obtaining consistent funding to run programs and benefit the community. One of the things that we are seeing is we go after these grants and then we don't go after continued funding for the grants because there is no policy writer in the city across any department. There is no data analyst across any department except for the crime analyst in the police department, and there is no grant writer. So the bandwidth and operational efficiency just is not there to sustain any programming. Additionally, the grant writer will play a critical role in writing grants for municipal projects, leading to advancements in our infrastructure and capital improvement projects. For community development, this adds one senior economic development program manager in the economic development division proposed to go under the community development department. The economic development division will be folded in under the community development department. The community development director will be expected to have 0.25 FTE dedicated towards economic development for the city. As a supplement to the community development director's bandwidth, the city manager proposes to add one senior economic development program manager under the combined department. This model is still in phasing and research, so it hasn't been fully presented, so it's just an option. There's many different ways that we're going to look at bolstering economic development across the city, because the first part of this may be mitigation, but the second part of this exercise is revenue generation. So our work doesn't just stop on June 24th or June 30th. We have a lot of lift to go in order to get the budget stabilized, and that's gonna come from revenue generation under economic development. Okay, the last area under Model 3 is public safety and community resources. This is to adjust the budget for the Angelo Quinto Crisis Response Team to coincide with ARPA funding usage in the first fiscal year of the biennium. So the service model would be reduced and would line up with the police department's utilization rate for high call volume times needed across the city. And we do have our captain here, Captain Bittner, if you have questions, and I also see Felton Institute. We did send a team out to talk about this, and they did come up with this model. So if you have questions for Model 3.
Mr. Mayor, so on the first part, hiring the buyer positions, I think this is long, long overdue to centralize purchasing. The city of Antioch used to have a purchasing and assistant purchasing officer. It was lean, it was efficient, and it worked extraordinarily well. So I see this really as an opportunity for us to be efficient, to have it centralized, and be able to reduce costs when we're purchasing. The second, again, hiring the grant writer, this is also long overdue, and I'm assuming this is going to work in conjunction with the Townsend. Okay, so that makes sense. With regards to community development, the only suggestion and only comment I would have is that, and this is a HR situation, is that the community development director be hired first, so that this individual who is the community development director would be able to hire the senior economic development program manager.
Makes sense. Yep.
And so if we focus on hiring the community development director now, I would assume in mid-year we would be able to recruit for the other position, and that would be a decision by the new community development director. That's it.
Oh, yes. So on Model 3, yes, to the grant writer. I know Councilmember Torres Walker has been talking about this for years. And this really supports what we heard in DC. There were at least a couple of grants that we could have been getting more money on top of the money that we were already getting, and it was missed because we really didn't have that grant person in place to say, hey, actually we should be getting double the amount. So definitely I am in agreement with that. And then if I heard you correctly, for the Angelo Quinto response team, that Felton and APD work together on this reduced model, if they can come up and.
Yes, Chief Addington and Captain Bittner are here. Thanks, Captain.
Good evening, Council. Yeah, any questions you may have in regards to the Angelo Quinto response team, I can answer them best I can.
But I just wanted to verify, it sounded like the city manager did say that Felton and AP, you guys worked really closely together to
Correct.
come up with a model, a reduced model that's still gonna work and be very beneficial to the city.
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Can you explain the model?
We're still negotiating the model, but it's basically just cutting it down to 12 hours a day rather than a 24-hour operation. We're still trying to narrow down which 12 hours would be best suited for the city. So it'd still be a four-person response team, 12 hours a day. And that would be, if we worked to that, it'd be effective July 1.
I just want to confirm that that's no general fund contribution for year one, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that it? All right, thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Wilson,
Uh,
on that one?
that was it.
All right, anything, Councilmember Torres Walker? So I just want to make a statement that I'm not in favor of any added positions in this budget with the amount of money that we have to cut. The only one I would say I would consider would be the grant writer, to the extent that the grant writer can create enough revenue so that it's a net positive for the city in that regard. So when it comes to the buyer positions or the senior economic development program manager, that would be my position on those. All right, so we don't have any other on Model 3, Model 4, please?
All right.
Okay, let me get Model 4 up here. Okay, so under Model 4, the expenditures dropped to $106,340,386 in fiscal year '26. Expenditures are $109,723,683 in fiscal year '27. It does utilize $5 million of budget stabilization funds in each fiscal year, so that's a total of $10 million over 2 years. So in fiscal year '26, that leaves a remaining deficit of $6.3 million, still well over the 20%. So theoretically, you wouldn't even have to use the $5 million in fiscal year '26. And then in fiscal year '27, that brings the reserve balance slightly above the 20% threshold with $3.9 million over. So you could reduce the budget stabilization transfer a bit and use the actual reserves in the general fund to supplement the deficit versus pulling it in from the budget stabilization fund. And with that, I will leave it to the city manager to talk about what is built into this model.
Thank you so much. For Model 4 and 5, the mitigation is the same. The first one is citywide, using $5 million of the budget stabilization funds in each fiscal year to offset the operating deficit. So that means the budget stabilization funds will be reduced by $10 million over the biennium. The second one, which I said when I started I would like to avoid and would not support, is a 5% annual furlough of employees, which is equivalent to 4 hours pay reduction each biweekly payroll, with the exception of APSMA and APOA, bargaining unit employees, as it would be a public safety risk to reduce police department operating hours by 1 day every week. This furlough impacts general fund employees only. This cost is for general fund employees only and those funds that receive direct operating subsidy for the general fund, recreation, animal services, and the marina. The impact is huge. All city offices, excluding the police department and water treatment plants, will be closed 1 day every other week. This assumes that all elected officials voluntarily take a 5% reduction in stipends as well. Should City Council want to consider this option, an equivalent 5% pay reduction should be negotiated with the bargaining units. Implementing a furlough will result in service reductions to our community with an impact not only for availability to the public, but delay in processing and project completion times due to being closed one day every other week. While there may be minimal reduction in utility costs due to building closures, there is the increased potential for lost revenues, particularly for recreation and animal services.
And I just want to be clear on the furlough costs. This is just the general fund portion, but the furlough would be applied citywide. So there would be a cost impact to the water fund for the non-water treatment portion of the water fund, because the water treatment plant is a 24-hour operation, to any of the special revenue funds outside of recreation, which is in here. So this is not that the furlough would apply just to the general fund. It would be citywide. But this impact is what the direct impact to the general fund would be for that cost reduction measure.
And Model 5 is 10%, so that would be 8 hours, an 8-hour pay reduction each biweekly payroll, and a 10% pay reduction to the elected officials' stipend. So you can go over Model 5, I guess.
Yeah, so
numbers.
Model 5 up here on the screen, since it's essentially doubling the 5%, so instead of the 1.18, it's double that in fiscal year 27, and then and that also assumes for fiscal year 26, that's a full year of implementation, which, I know some negotiations and other things need to happen, so I don't know if it would even be able to happen by July 1st. But as the city manager is recommending, we're hoping to avoid the furloughs, at least in the first year, while we work on long-term fiscal sustainability measures, see how we can bring up our revenues and explore other options with animal services, recreation, some other things to try and reduce our expenditures in lieu of having to do a furlough, at least in the first year. But everything would be doubled from 5% to 10%. And as you can see on here, it utilizes the $5 million each year, which again could be reduced in this Model 5 as we're over the 20% by $13.4 million in fiscal year 26, and then fiscal year 27 we're over by $6.3 million. Again, starting with Model 1, adding each of the mitigation measures going forward, but up to a 10% furlough versus a 5%.
And that concludes our model discussion.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I realized that we had to put all the options on the table for discussion, and if we reduced it at 5% is about 2.4, 10% about 4.8. And I don't want any reduction in employee salary, but there is a reality that's also here. I'm happy that so many employees are in this room. So many of our memorandums of understandings are going to be discussed. Contracts are ending, negotiations are beginning. We have to be extraordinarily sensitive to the issue because we really don't have money for a lot of increases in salaries and benefits and that sort. So I think the city, hopefully, will not embrace the 5% work furlough or the 10%, but I hope the employees will help the city overall when we get into union negotiations, because the dollars just are not there. I've always viewed, from the mayor, city council, staff, and all of our employees, this is a family. And right now, the revenue is simply not there because of a $54 million budget that we have inherited, the city council. So this is tough, but I think having jobs full-time with benefits and overtime is something that should be embraced, and the trade-off is we're not going to do, my recommendation that we're not going to do the 5% or 10% furlough, but I hope that you will also help us, make sure that the city stays financially solvent. Thank you.
All right, any other comments?
Yeah, I too am not in favor of furloughs if we can avoid that at all costs. But yeah, I wanted to just reiterate that as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I wish Mayor Pro Tem Rocha was here to be a part of this discussion since you, Mayor, and him requested the city manager to bring back this discussion around potential furloughs and layoffs. I would have loved to hear his input on this. Since I came in during a time of contract negotiations, and when the city was trying to make parity and bring people up to where they needed to be because people were getting paid really low wages. I came into the city at the time when our police department had a Me Too, where every time another police department got a raise, they would automatically get a raise. And all of these factors occurred. And so we increased pay, brought people up to where they needed to be, and most city departments were still understaffed, because what this city has done to balance the budget has been to intentionally keep departments understaffed so that salary savings could be used to balance the budget and for other projects. I think that this is not something that I support, obviously, but I do think we need to have a conversation, because the mandate that was brought to this council in last year was to staff up every city department. And by staffing up every city department, we are going to have conversations about what would that look like, and the potential, what does the potential revenue need to look like for a city where every department is fully staffed? I would like to see that, see what that would look like and what it would mean. It's not here, but I think I would like to know.
Well, I can tell you at least for the only savings built into Model 1 are the business license accounting specialists. I mean, we have to just add back in the phased-in hiring of positions and all that, but we can bring that back certainly at the next model. But, you're the next discussion, but you're looking at probably at least, let me find my table here. So 4.5. You're probably looking close to $5 million in additional expenditures in the fiscal year 26 number. And we're already short, so that would bring that 109 million, let's say, to 115 million. So then we're, down almost $20 million in revenue to supply that. That's just ballpark.
And that's with every department fully staffed with all the current positions.
Right,
and nothing
taking
else.
the baseline Model 1 and adding back the proposed frozen positions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I did want to see what a furlough looks like on, as far as what the cost savings would be, being that we are looking at $12, $13 million deficit still. I'm not, well, first of all, I'd like to address Councilmember Torres Walker. Up until December of 2021, it was never a strategy to not fill positions in order to balance the budgets. That's just a false statement. I don't know what happened after that. Maybe that's what happened. But I will say that that we have a serious budget deficit that we're going to have to address here. And I'm not in favor of taking it off of the current employees, either 5 or 10%. I think we're in a good place right now where we actually have some momentum moving forward, and I'd like to build upon that. And I'd like to see us continue to have a fully staffed workforce to the extent that we're able to, and that we're able to keep our organization moving forward within the ability to pay for it. So I just want to let you know that I did want to see what the numbers were, and everything's always an option to me. But I'm not in favor of seeing us using a furlough as a way of balancing the budget on this 1-year budget we're talking about right now.
Excuse me, Mayor, I wouldn't say that it's a false statement, but it definitely is what I heard from department heads when I first came to this city. So either the department heads were being false and not honest, or you're not being honest now. And so, and we can't go backwards, so we have to move forward. And intentionally keeping departments understaffed cannot be the strategy. And
I
so
totally agree.
I'm just saying, it's not, I'm not making a statement that department heads didn't make to me.
That's fine. I just want to just clarify that up until December of 2021, we never had a strategy of understaffing departments. So, all right, I guess it's time now for public comments. No? Do you have more?
No, you have additional budget considerations on page 17, I assume. You would want to have some feedback?
Thank you.
Yes. So items that came up during the numerous budget study sessions that we have, that we've had, that we want direction on. And again, by the end of this evening, we want clear direction on everything you want us to incorporate into a model bringing back before final adoption, just so we can look at it again, get suggestions, see if we need to tweak anything, but we really need some direction going forward. So, you know, we're running out of time for one, but so that we know we can incorporate what council's desire is before that. So on page 17 of the staff report, we had stated that additional street sweeping was excluded from the budget. The prior city council had wanted additional street sweeping services. So if council wants that added back into the budget, it'd be $227,000 in fiscal year 26, and then $233,000 in fiscal year 27. So we can incorporate that in the budget if council desires. It would either be an additional budget ask to the deficit we have, increasing that deficit, or if council wanted to direct that it get pulled from another area so that there's an equivalent budget cut to cover the street sweeping, or they could say, let's not do additional street sweeping for fiscal year 26, see how it goes, and revisit it in fiscal year 27, but it is the pleasure of the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This argument is much like the one I made with regards to landscaping, but I understand this is an area. So I would suggest for direction to staff that we maintain the sweeping until December 31st, and then at mid-year review, we actually, you know, go back and review this particular item.
Any other comments on the street sweeping item?
So is that to maintain the existing or to maintain the additional through December?
Maintain the existing.
But the existing includes the additional services.
Right.
Okay, so then we'll have to add in basically half that cost back into the budget.
Okay. I think it's important, but let's revisit it because as the city manager indicated, the council is going to receive a monthly report so we can follow every single month so there's no surprises for us as we move forward. Good luck with that. But I would like to see the additional services, and then at mid-year we can review that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, if there's consensus on that, we can add in half of that amount into the budget, but we need consensus on that.
Go ahead.
You know, it's funny, I was gonna say the opposite, go reduce and then come back to see if we can add. So it was basically the exact opposite of what Councilmember Freitas said.
Okay, tiebreaker.
Yeah, so I would like to not include this right now as a matter of it's $225,000 that, you know, we have other things. I would like to keep it as a placeholder to Councilmember Freitas's point that it could be hanging out there if we want to add it back in, but I would say as part of the budget, we don't include it.
I agree with Councilmember Freitas to add it in now and not hold off on it. Only because I advocated strongly for increased street sweeping because residents in District 1 were constantly making calls to me and emails about how dirty the streets were, how, you know, the sidewalks when people are biking. The mayor has walked Lemon Tree and Pepper Tree with me, as well as Manzanita, in those neighborhoods where there's trash and abandoned vehicles. And so it wasn't just about street sweeping, it was also about increasing traffic enforcement. Because if we want everybody, like we talked about the last budget item around landscaping, if we want everybody to feel good about where they live, we can't keep leaving different communities at a disadvantage, because we want to live in neighborhoods with clean streets as well. So I believe that we should add it back to the budget, and as Councilmember Freitas said, revisit it at mid-year and see if it's still needed.
Is there, it was my understanding this is for arterial streets, this wasn't for local streets. Can there be a clarification on where exactly this additional sweeping is happening?
Yes, our deputy director's coming up.
Yeah, because I remember us picking the streets, because when I requested additional street sweeping, other district council members requested it. So we reduced it to some of those high traffic areas, but they still have a lot of debris.
So this funding does include an extra sweeping every month for the arterials, but it also has some funding for select areas that we choose to go in and do target sweepings.
Yeah.
So there is funding for that too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So we'll have to wait for Mayor Pro Tem.
Wait for Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, the next item is that Public Works had put in a request for part-time help for facilities maintenance for increasing demand of maintenance of city facilities. The cost is $50,013 in fiscal year '26 and $52,072 in fiscal year '27. That was removed from the budget. So we're asking for direction if City Council would like to have us add this into the budget, pause it, not consider it.
Could we have a better explanation of what does this involve?
Yes, our deputy director will come back up.
Good evening. So we have a very small facilities department. It consists basically of one lead worker and 2 full-time staff. We've currently added a building here on 800 2nd Street that's going to need more help, more assistance in maintaining. There's also talk of maybe taking over the library maintenance in the coming year. So it'll help full-time staff when one of them goes on vacation, helps fill in, because they already have a small working unit there. So it's basically to help fill out for the downtime when they're on vacation or off sick.
Do we have a timeline for when 800 2nd Street will be coming online?
Not yet, but we're in the process of doing the upgrades to the building. Within the next 6 months, we hope to have it occupied.
Okay, and then the library decision, who do we get paid for doing that?
Come back to council. And so in our contract, we were supposed to take over the facility, and then we just haven't yet. So we'll be bringing that to you all.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Director, are you fleet as well? Because the next one is fleet, just in case you want to stay. Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I would just put this as a placeholder at mid-year review.
Anybody else? No. Okay, I agree, putting it as a placeholder. Number 3, please.
Okay, so the next item is $110,000 to purchase 2 trailers for the Streets Division. These could be authorized to be paid from the Vehicle Replacement Fund instead of the general fund. Of course, it's new to fleet, so there's no replacement fund set aside. However, we would catch up contributions in hopefully the next year budget cycle once we're in a more financially stable position. The Vehicle Replacement Fund is estimated to have approximately $11 million in it as of June 30th. So with that, I can ask Deputy Director Zepeda to come up and explain the need for the 2 trailers.
So I believe this is a mistake. This is 2 pieces of equipment. It's not 2 trailers. It's for it should be for a line striper, a thermal line striper, and for a graffiti remover machine that works off of sandblasting instead of.
Okay, that sold me. I would put back in. That's all I needed to hear.
So, did you want that added in the general fund or the vehicle replacement fund?
Vehicle replacement.
And is there council consensus on there?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Fine with that.
All right, you have council consensus on that one.
Thank you. So the next is for the Public Safety and Community Resources, the Environmental Resources Division. As outlined in the March 4th and March 11th Public Safety and Community Resources budget presentations, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Division, which is a division within the Capital Improvement Fund, will be fully depleting PG&E rebate funds received in fiscal year '26, thus creating a funding shortfall of $52,500 in fiscal year '26 and $58,037 in fiscal year '27 to implement the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, also known as CARP. Potential funding sources for this are the gas tax, water fund, general fund, and marsh landing mitigation funds, which we have a deposit account for water conservation efforts. And then if funding is not provided, the city will not be able to complete energy efficiency programs for low-income households and will not be able to increase outreach on sustainable programs available to the community.
All right, any comments from council?
So, Mr. Cole, I have a question. Can we spend gas tax, water fund, and general fund, I understand, and on this activity legally? And what is the marsh landing mitigation fund? I have no idea.
So the city receives some money from NRG
Oh.
for water conservation efforts. So we collect monies in a deposit account to be used for water conservation efforts. Per Julie Hawes-Wadovich, the entire expenditure could not be spent out of the marsh landing because there has to be some nexus between it. So I'm not sure what percentage could be funded out of marsh landing versus the others. But these sources of funds were provided to me by Julie Hawes-Wadovich as eligible uses.
So it's a total cost of 52.5, and then it could be spread over these different funds? Is that what?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the percentages. I'm not sure if Julie is here this evening or if perhaps, okay. So,
We can follow up.
But is it legal to spend gas tax revenue on climate control?
No, I don't believe that's
I
the
don't think
case.
so
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
And water fund? Kind of question.
Enterprise funds that's a Proposition 218 issue. We can't use that on any expenditure that doesn't benefit the ratepayers.
So really, we're talking about the general fund then?
the general fund and then some piece of the marsh landing. We'd have to work with Julie to see what amount could theoretically be used from the marsh landing fund and what the remaining would be for the general fund.
All right, I'd recommend that come back to us with the exact numbers or with the proposed numbers, and also that the city attorney looks at the recommendation to make sure that it's legally defensible.
I agree.
Okay. So next is under the non-departmental budget. There's $60,000 included in the fiscal year 25 budget for a Chinese history project. Council may want to evaluate returning these funds to reserves or allocating to a higher priority general fund need. But of course, the deficit is the highest need that I see at this point, but of course, that's council's decision.
Since there's been no activity, I would suggest that we take these funds and put them back in the reserve.
Any other comments from council? No? I would like to know more about the project and what the history is on it. I'm not.
So we've paid over $100,000 in prior years to the Antioch Historical Society for a project there already. This kind of came up out of a presentation given to City Council a couple of years ago, and that wasn't on a regular agenda. It was a presentation, so Council made the decision to add $60,000 to the budget to pursue a Chinese history project beyond what has already been done. But nothing really has been vetted out. No proposals been sent out by the city to get artists other than the artists that presented, which was just a presentation by an artist. There was no formal vetting process or a request for qualifications issued by the city to determine how to allocate the funds or what they envision for a project. So it would really take more work to vet what exactly the city wants for the project, and it would have to come back at that point.
So I would agree with Councilmember Freitas to return the funds, I would say, to the reserves.
Okay. And then the next is in fiscal year '25, $277,131 is included in the fiscal year '25 budget for nonprofit capacity building grants. As of yet, no guidelines or parameters have been established to carry this out. Council, again, may want to evaluate returning the funds to reserves or allocating to another project.
Since there have been no parameters, I would suggest that we return the funds back to the reserve, but if someone wants to come forward, I think establishment of the policy is the first thing we should do before the funding. So I'd say take the money, put it in reserve.
I agree with that.
I agree that we need parameters, and we did request from the city attorney's office to bring parameters and a potential process, and we didn't get there. It should be something that we develop parameters around, since we also have individuals requesting funding to do work downtown. And so I think if we're gonna have a grant process, it should be more robust. We should have an application process that should be open to across the city for innovation and small business creation, economic development, just different things that we can model it. So I agree with putting this off, but really want to make sure that the priority is that we actually create some parameters for a citywide project, since we have people downtown waiting on us.
Okay, and then the last item is that all the budget models presented removing vehicle replacement fund set-asides for general fund departments for the next 2 fiscal year, and any new to fleet needs would be paid from the replacement fund, just as you authorized for the 2 pieces of equipment for public works. This will require an increase in the replacement fund contribution in future years to catch up. And as I mentioned, the balance of the replacement fund is approximately $11 million as of June 30th. So this does provide, significant cost savings in the next 2 budget cycles. We can, keep it in the fiscal year '26, and since we would not be adopting fiscal year '27, it could definitely be something that's up for again in discussion in the fiscal year '27 budget. But it provides significant budget savings. It's a loan to ourselves, so that's the lowest hanging fruit that I feel makes sense to eliminate from the budget and, help save employees' jobs in lieu of setting aside money for vehicle replacement. But that's my opinion, but asking consensus for council on that.
Mr. Mayor, this is a sensitive issue for me. I just need to understand for the next 2 years, what does it look like with regards to vehicle replacements? What's the cost? Because we can somewhat go through that and make some changes, to the number of vehicles or equipment or something of that sort. I just don't want to see a carte blanche that this is what we're going to do without really understanding how much of equipment we're really talking about, what is the cost, and what's going to be the impact for the catch-up. We saw when we did the purchase of the 24 police vehicles, it was significant. And so I don't think there's enough information on this item. I would just suggest that we get a better handle on what is anticipated for vehicles, what is the anticipated cost, and how would that impact the catch-up in future years.
Is that number about $1.2 million a year that currently that we would not be putting into the equipment or?
Yeah, and
vehicle
again,
replacement?
it would be just the general fund, so the water,
I
sewer,
understand.
everybody else would still be setting aside funds. So yes, it's $1.1 million in each of the next 2 fiscal years. And, we'll definitely bring back, Public Works is the one that determines the replacement needs, the service life. They evaluate the vehicles in the fleet and determine what needs to be replaced, what can be and they also work with departments for what's new to fleet, what are your needs. So we can definitely bring that presentation back with the figures. But again, it could be one of those things recommending to at least keep it in fiscal year '26, have a more thorough discussion brought back with Public Works, and then reevaluate that for fiscal year
Right,
'27.
but you're talking about $3 million, so the catch-up increase could be significant. I just need more information.
But even if right, exactly, I understand. And in the vehicles, the replacement is kicked in over the service life of the vehicle, so.
What does that fund look like fully funded?
Fully funded, it's about, I believe the last time I looked, it's about $7 million short, but it's always going to be short because you kick in a vehicle, you purchase a vehicle today, and if it's a 10-year service life, you're paying for the replacement over 10 years. So it's never going to be fully funded unless the city's just flush with cash someday and says, let's just fully fund the replacement fund. You're always going to have a shortfall because you have different dates that a vehicle was purchased, so.
So in addition to the 7 million, we'll fall back another 2.5 million, basically, so we'll be at 9.5 million short funded in a
Correct.
couple of
But
years.
again, as I said, you're always going to have, probably at least $5 million every year as you purchase vehicles that's going to be short.
Part of the problem is when it hits severely. The vehicles need to be replaced. There is some subjectivity in that, even though there's a policy. I mean, the thing I want to avoid are the peaks and valleys of vehicle replacements. So try to keep that as smooth as possible, with little variation, I think is advisable from a budgetary perspective.
All right, is there consensus on the vehicle replacement fund? All right, thank you.
So I'm kind of unclear what the consensus is, just to bring it back or to include it in the budget as being out, but still bring back a presentation?
I think it was included in the budget, but to bring it back
Okay.
as a presentation so we have better
Okay,
understanding.
thank you.
Sure. Sure. Mr. Mayor, another issue that I don't think we've addressed, and that is the liability issues that we have for retirement and we have for OPEB. I don't think we've really had a discussion, and we need, I think, to visit that and just make us somewhat aware of how large this liability may or may not exist in the next 2 years, because I doubt we'll be making any contribution, to
Well,
these.
we're required by PERS to make a contribution, otherwise we will be in default and they will penalize us. So the PERS gets addressed all the time. As terms of the medical after retirement, it is built in to make those contributions. I did point out, I believe it was either the January or the March staff report, if council wanted to not contribute to the medical after retirement funds. I don't have that exact amount in front of me, that they could do that. And then, because we do have the money set aside in the Section 115 trust, however, what that's going to do is increase our ultimate liability. But I did have that staff report where I presented that to council as an option. And again, it would be one of those things where I recommend not touching the contributions over fiscal year '26. And depending on how we work out over fiscal year '26, then potentially we could explore reimbursing ourselves from the trust for the medical after retirement payments, which again will ultimately reduce ultimately increase our liability because we don't have as much set aside. But it is a decision council could make, but I would recommend that we not stop payments in fiscal year '26, evaluate that in fiscal year '27, but I can certainly remind council from that report.
And
what
that's
the
been
value is.
included in our budgets?
The budgets
It is
include
assumed
payments.
that?
The budgets assume payments.
That
to-
was really the question.
Yes,
Okay, never mind.
yeah.
Yeah, so we want to continue making our fully amortized payments, but we also would like to know where we are with
Yeah.
anything.
Yes, like I said, I can definitely bring back what was presented to council before and what the costs were if we end up deciding to exclude that from the budget. In terms of how it would impact the overall liability, though, we would need to enlist which we can do over the next fiscal year, we can enlist the services of our actuary to give us, create a model of if we did not contribute the full actuarially determined contribution, which is what that's called just for the OPEB piece, because PERS, we have to pay that, how that would impact our liability. So that is something we could bring back over the next year. It doesn't turn around quick. You know, the actuary has to take some time to build the model, but that is something definitely that we could bring back sometime after July 1st. It might take them 4 or 5 months to come up with that, but if council wants that, we can certainly have that done.
So, Mr. Mayor, before we, take public comments, I just want to be sure because the time is getting closer and closer. Are there any questions? Have you received the direction you need or want?
I know. I would like to know if there's anything other than this you want us to bring back to consider closing the gap even further. We still have a gap. I also want to point out that our Public Works Director will be presenting the CIP in a few days. That could help as well.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming that we've given direction and they're going to come back with a draft report, draft budget, and that's where more discussion and dialogue can take place. Because, I mean, we still have to focus on the gap that we have, particularly in fiscal year 26.
Yeah, so the idea would be after this evening to go back and compile everything and have one more robust study session to kind of go over, here's everything we've put together. Is there anything you want to adjust at this point before we bring back a final for adoption? And again, the model, as you can see, all the models for fiscal year 26, we are above the 20% reserve. So we do not need to draw from the budget stabilization fund if council does not want to do that. We can use the existing reserves that lie within the general fund as a quote-unquote balancing mechanism, even though it's not balanced. That way, and you can see, how much we've closed the gap, what we still have to address moving forward. But then again, we're, going to be diligently working on the mitigation factors over the fiscal year to see what we can either carve out more during fiscal year 26 or at least get in place for fiscal year 27.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? I would like to see us take the general plan $1 million out for fiscal year 26 and defer that until we have a look at how next year's budget goes.
Are you asking for concurrence? Because I'm opposed to that.
Yeah, that's
The
fine.
general plan was last approved in 2003. And we need to have a discussion about Antioch's future growth. And I consider that a critical element. So I would be opposed to that.
I'm opposed to it too, mainly because I've been saying this 2003, and not just future growth, but current growth.
Sure.
Because we have grown without redoing the general plan to meet the current needs. So I also don't agree with that. I would have to agree with Councilmember Freitas.
Yeah, I agree that we definitely need a general plan update. There's just a lot that's happened in the city, and we haven't caught up. Our general plan isn't caught up to the population that we have today, so we definitely need that general plan update.
Yeah, my thought is it hasn't been done in over 20 years, and one more year isn't going to kill us, but consensus is to continue with the general plan. I'd also like to look into freezing general fund vacancies that are not hired right now, except for police department, code enforcement, and any other essential positions that may be vacant. So I'd like to find out what that number looks like.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back to that. I mean, I can tell you at least for the business license and accounting specialists, those are currently frozen. So that's outlined in those are currently vacant. So you have the cost for those. I believe outside of the police department and code enforcement, there's not too many vacancies left in the general fund other than these partial for the engineer positions. Oh, we do, but they're... Yeah, so, but we'll definitely come back with that. I'm just, the majority of the vacancies in the general fund right now, not that there aren't others, are in the police department, so.
All right, thank you. And also, the Parks and Recreation presentation had indicated there were some revenue increases that were potential, and I see that we're going to be adopting the fee schedule coming up. Is staff working on what those fee increases would look like as far as revenue is concerned?
Yes.
Yeah, so when none of the increases that are proposed in the master fee have been built in the budget since they are not adopted yet. So on the 27th is the public hearing for the master fee for council to consider. And, departments have their marching orders that, depending on what is approved, get us revised revenue projections for anything that could have an impact to general fund and recreation to build into the budget. It's obviously it's not going to be $10 million, but anything we can chip away at to build into the budget for revised revenue projections will help.
So on the 27th, will you have an estimate of what those increases would look like as far as in additional revenue?
We will ask departments to have those figures available.
Okay. I think that's it for now.
And just one point of clarification, at council, there's a consensus for a one-year budget. We just want, we've been discussing that, so we just want to make sure. Okay,
Yes.
thank you for the confirmation.
One-year budget with monthly reports?
Yes, and then, when we do fiscal year 27, we'll kind of already have a framework baseline kind of built and be able to adjust from that. So it won't be as laborious as building a budget from scratch. We have kind of our framework of what we're thinking a draft fiscal year 27 looks like. So, which helps us because we know really what we have to carve at and dig at.
And we can make adjustments as we get revenues.
All right. And I just want to be on the record saying that, we're still at probably a $10 million deficit, which is still too high. So we're going to have to come back and do some more work on this budget. In my opinion, that's too high. So, all right, good. So is that anything else that?
That's all we need on our end. So you're free
Okay.
to either ask more questions or turn it over to public comment.
Thank you very much. Great job on that. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk?
Yes, so the first speaker we have is Montserrat Cabral, followed by Bruce Cook Jr. and Miguel Santoyo. And for the 3-minute timer, I'll be using my phone. Hold on one second.
Okay. Good evening.
Evening.
Hello, Mayor, council members, colleagues, Antioch. I wish I could face you, but I can't. I am here tonight representing the City of Antioch's Management Bargaining Unit. We, more than anyone, understand the seriousness of the fiscal challenge ahead and appreciate the work that staff and leadership have put into these models. We make up the department heads, the managers, the supervisors, the deputies, and the professionals. The question now is not just how to balance the budget, it's how do you do so in a way that sustains both operations and its workforce. Our members lead teams, manage essential services, and ensure the work gets done. We've stepped in through staffing shortages, shifting demands, and unprecedented operational pressures. And we've done so without hesitation. But proposals that rely on across-the-board furloughs ask us to carry on a burden that's not only heavy, but it's unsustainable. I must also express the concerns about the process. These proposals were made public a little over 24 hours ago through the publication of this special meeting. Bargaining groups were not consulted in advance, and yet we're partners in this work. Where is the partnership when staff are learning about these proposals simultaneously with the public? That's not the collaborative spirit in which we've always tried to uphold. Additionally, we find ourselves asking, how are we considering the creation of new positions under models 3 through 5 while also proposing pay cuts and furloughs for existing staff? That inconsistency sends a confusing message, one that undermines the trust and transparency that are critical in moments like these. We've been here before. In 2009, Antioch implemented furloughs to address the budget shortfall. While they delivered short-term savings and long-term costs were clear, employee morale declined, service delivery was reduced, and public trust eroded. Restoring full schedules and compensation later was a recognition that the approach, while expedient, was ultimately damaging. For me and many, this is a calling. This is not merely a job. As public servants, we are not afraid of hard decisions, but we ask that those decisions be rooted in strategy and not scarcity, in partnership and not surprise. We urge council to adopt a model that upholds service to the public and the well-being of those who serve. The strength of a city isn't just the numbers that it balances, but in how it chooses to support the people who make that balance possible. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bruce Cook Jr., followed by Miguel Santoyo and Brian Connolly.
Short here. How's everybody doing? Dang, that's loud. I won't be before you long. Just going to echo a couple things that have been brought to your attention, and as the young lady back there so eloquently said. We're going to start off with what's on the front of you right here. It says City of Antioch, California, right? And most of our signs, most of everything that's on the side of our vehicles say opportunity lives here, right? What do we mean by that? Like, what opportunity? What opportunity lives here? Because right now I stand before you as a person who not only lives in this city, but I work for this city. I do a lot for this city. Everyone in this room does a lot for this city. But when we look at that sign and we read it, it don't mean what it means when you guys read it, or when somebody else not from the city of Antioch reads it. It does not echo opportunity lives here. The fact that these models are basically being attached to the people who run this city is appalling. And then a couple days later, you're gonna say, hey, welcome City of Antioch employees, here's your appreciation day. What are we celebrating here? You want us, the men and women that support this city, to be excited about that day after listening to this. I'm not necessarily saying you all, I'm just saying that this right here ain't it. Opportunity lives here is supposed to mean something when you read those words, okay? Business statements, when you read a business statement, it pretty much says what that business is all about, right? So when you read the City of Antioch's business statement and the first thing you read is opportunity lives here, I think the City of Antioch as a whole should actually envision that. See what it means to read that and own up to it. Okay, not making it off the backs of the men and women who support the city in every single way. We say yes to things that are not even our job, and we do it with a smile. The interaction between community and employee workers are up to an all-time high. Morale within departments, all-time high. And now we want to tear that apart. We want to literally go backwards. Opportunity lives here is supposed to be a forward movement. When you listen to that, it's supposed to envision, hey, I'm not only thinking about the now, but I'm thinking about the future. There is no future in opportunity lives here right now. We need to start thinking about not only what's happening now, but how do we support that moving forward? And that ain't just cut the legs from underneath you as you're moving forward. How do you move forward that way? There's no forward movement that way. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me. And retention. We can't keep nobody. People are coming here, they're learning, and they're moving on. And they're making triple the amount. They are actually enjoying their work. So that would be my biggest thing. That would be the thing that you're going to hear echoing throughout all my brothers and sisters standing behind me.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Thank you, Miguel. Brian Connolly, followed by Eric Strongman and Stacy McPherson.
I ain't gonna be near as good as those last two were, but I work at the water treatment plant. I'm also a resident for 48 years. Lived in Antioch. Just want to say that I know it's a difficult job when you're planning a budget and trying to make everybody happy. You're never going to make anybody happy, but just for the part that I have, I work for the water plant, and I think that you guys made a large investment up there, and saying that we want to take and potentially defer some of the funds that we spend up there, I think is a waste of time for the money that we've spent so far. We're already about 20% short on staffing, and we take our job seriously. And same thing with the retention. We just got to a point to where we were able to keep employees, and we don't want to make it to where we're having people come through, you know, a cycle and train them up and to go work somewhere else. Something else I heard you say, where we're wanting to work together. We've already given up 7.5% of our salaries by giving back some time that we've given, that we've worked, and giving back some of the hours that we have opportunities to work to try and make things as a whole. So I think that if we all can work together to make this work without having people give up their salaries or their monies to work, or not hiring quality people, I think that making it work for everybody would be the best opportunity that we could have. Thank you.
Next speaker is Eric Strongman, followed by Stacy McPherson and Leslie May.
Thank you, Council. Everybody spoke so well. I won't take too much time. But one thing, I appreciate all your comments, especially on furloughs. It's not something that we want to see here in the city moving forward. One thing that might not have spoken on is we're here as a family, right? I really see it as a family. Our bargaining groups are people individually. So when we have problems, let's bring it together. Let's help find each other solutions. We're just phone calls away. We can sit down and have meetings, but we are highly opposed to furloughs. Like Bruce said, we want to move forward. I won't take any more time. I really thank you very much, and really think about moving forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Stacy McPherson, followed by Leslie May and David Wilson.
Hello. It's really hard to prepare for a meeting when we had less than 24 hours notice, so give us some grace. It doesn't take a year to get this bad, so I'm curious how it got to this before sessions like this, to be so aggressive to try and fix a deficit of that amount in just between fiscal year 25 to 27. So I'm curious how we got here so fast. I was kind of disheartened by the fact that we weren't included as part of the discussion of maybe possible solutions. And because these people know what works in the city and what doesn't, they know what can be cut. They have vital information, and they should be provided to have input in this process, instead of at the end saying, we have this model, now we want it up for a vote, and then put it in front of the a meeting for confer process with the unions. That's not acceptable. These employees are vital, and if they are family, they should not be excluded from a position that are discussions that have vital impact on them, their wages, their working conditions. If you want to talk about furloughing, you're going to have to deal with your vacancy issues, and it's going to increase. And if you want to deal with your unfunded liability, you're going to have to deal with your retention issues. Because if you're going to have people that are going to take a 5 to 10% pay cut, you're going to lose people. They were serious. You can go not too far down the road, up, down, east, west, north, south, and they can make more. They might have better incentives, better benefits and stuff like that. What's the incentive for these people to stay? And that's one of the issues you're going to have. So not only are you going to have to deal with the unfunded liability issues of all the people that you may lose, but how are you going to recruit? How are you going to retain? How are you going to get your unfunded liability and your OPEB down? Those are the issues that need to be had. And we request respectfully to be part of these conversations if you're going to develop models that are going to impact all of our employees so sustainably, that basically we should be part of the discussion and possibly part of a solution and have some input in that. So prior to any models being presented, we respectfully request to be part of this conversation, especially the Public Works Department. You're saying it's only going to impact general fund employees. It's my understanding that a majority of their salaries come from the enterprise fund. So why are they going to take such a sustainable cut? So these are questions that we have. We want to be part of the solutions. We want to be part of the conversations prior to, again, to the meet and confer process. We want that respect. We want to be part of the solution. They want something that's viable. We understand you have a difficult job, and we respect that. But we need to be part of this family if we are a family and work together to have a viable solution going forward. Because to get that type of deficit took longer than just a year or two to get to that. So we should have been part of the discussion sooner. So respectfully, we want to be part of that process.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie May, followed by David Wilson and David Dawvey.
Good evening, council and community. I used to be on a union, the state union, and I was in bargaining. This is not the way you do it. I mean, I understand. I came in here looking at all these city employees and thinking to myself, wow, look what they're facing. And with the cost rising in this city, well, in the whole United States, because of 45, 47 and his clowns, we are suffering. These people need to pay their mortgages, rent. They got bills too. So you cut salaries, that means they're leaving. And the ones who don't have a mortgage, they can rent somewhere else. Or they can put their houses up for sale. My second part is that I don't agree with cutting Angelo Quinto crisis response team because that would not meet the criteria for the agreement with the DOJ. They're supposed to be 24-hour. We need them 24-hour. Mental health does not have a time limit. They don't have, okay, we act a fool from 10 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. No, it doesn't go down like that. And the last part I'm gonna say is, I really hate to be gaslit. So reckless and rogue police that were here, officers, cost this city money. The insurance company, and let's call it a thing, came to the council a couple of years ago and had a discussion with the council and let them know that they were going to have, Antioch was going to have to pony up money out of their pockets in order to keep insurance here. Otherwise, we would have had no insurance, the city of Antioch, okay? So Antioch has had to pony up money for these lawsuits, in case you guys don't know. So when we see this deficit, they want to blame it on, well, the last people and all this and the mayor. No, let's tell the truth, shame the devil. You have to pay for what damages were done by the past rogue and reckless officers. That's where this deficit comes from. So really, I'm just hating that you're gaslighting all of us adults because we also want to know what the city has paid out for lawsuits. Nobody ever discusses that. That should be public knowledge. We want to know what you guys have paid out and what's pending to be paid out because the lawsuits are still coming in. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is David Wilson, followed by David Dawvey and Melissa Case.
Good evening, City Council. I'm here to voice my concerns with this recent budget study session, more importantly, with this proposed cuts to the Public Works Department. Although this decision will reduce dollars on paper, it also greatly reduces the morale of our hardworking employees who keep the city running. This lack of morale would make it harder to retain experienced staff and nearly impossible to attract and maintain the younger generation of employees who would otherwise see a future here in Antioch. Furloughs may seem like a cost-saving measure, but it may have opposite effect. Workers would still have to meet the same demands, which can lead to overtime and, ironically, higher costs for the city in the long run. The broader impact on the city is just as troubling. With fewer resources, fewer hours, and fewer workers, we'll see less beautification throughout Antioch, slower response times, and more visible signs of neglect. Things like overgrown medians, delayed graffiti removal, excuse me, These delays may seem small, but altogether they influence how residents and visitors feel about the city. When a place looks uncared for, community pride and happiness drop. In short, this budget may save money in the short term, but it risks long-term costs in morale, appearance, and city livability. I urge you to reconsider. Thank you.
Next speaker is David Dawvey, followed by Melissa Case and Corey Johnston.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mayor. Hello, my name is David Davey, and I've been in the city 2 years now at the water treatment plant. Since arriving here at the plant, I've seen progress made in hiring the right personnel that has made the difference in our abilities to become less reliant on contracting out and doing jobs in-house. In the 2 years of being here with the city, we have rebuilt both A-B basins that were CIP projects that were projected to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what we were able to do it for. We rebuilt Beveridge Pump Station. We have begun to repair and rebuild Hillcrest Pump Station by pulling pumps, putting new motors in, and pulling new wires that was quoted for tens of thousands of dollars more than what we have been able to do it for. Pulling wires that were quoted for $10,000 more than what it costed us to do. That has saved the city a great amount of money, and by freezing and putting positions on hold, we would not have been able to complete such projects. It seems to be a step backwards now that we have made such great strides in our plant to have the budget cut out from underneath us. I do not think taking money from people that are doing the work on the ground, not only at the plant but also in the other departments, is really going to be a sustainable way of saving money long term. If we cut money from our own employees, that opens up to having to use contractors to do jobs that we are able and willing to do. I've been involved in numerous projects that we have had collections and distribution help to correct work that has been done previously by contractors, costing the city money twice. Also, it is a morale killer to know that we have put in such work but can be cut so fast. Instead of cutting wages from or furloughing employees, maybe we need to look at programs that just drain the city's resources. Many of us choose to work here not only because this is the city we grew up in, and now we choose to raise our families in as well. If these budget cuts were implemented, it would be detrimental not only for the city residents, but also for the city employees. We're getting it twice for us that live here and work here. So I would definitely urge you to rethink these that you have up here right now. Thank you, that's it.
Next speaker is Melissa Case, followed by Corey Johnston and Warren Spoon.
Okay, here's my comments. I know this probably won't go through, but regarding an second assistant city manager position, I just want to express a concern. And I understand we're facing a deficit, but I think it's important to acknowledge that Bessie is just one person, and I think an exceptional one, but the scope of what we want to accomplish in Antioch requires robust support, and this department is already short-staffed. So I guess my idea is to help her hire her chief of staff, which is what she called him, and I don't know if such a person exists, but maybe they could be a grant writer and a data analyst as well. Removal part-time help, I agreed with that, but I just want to remind council that you have incredible people that support all of you and eager to contribute their skills and energy without compensation, and it's a good way to strengthen civic engagement. So if you do need help, I'd help anyone, even Monica, I'd help you. I think it's a great way to get people, if you need help, reach out to the people that are engaged. I was also here during council when we stopped watering Maravista Hills Park, and I saw my neighbors mow the grass out there. That's a big park for that. And I just want to commend the people that do take care of my park, because I drive by it every day. And we got teenagers out there leaving their water bottles on the basketball courts, but every morning when I walk my dog, they're gone. So they do a great job, and my park is looking beautiful, and I love it. I'm not saying everything because he already addressed it. So the Senior Economic Development Program Manager, I think this position is absolutely needed. While I acknowledge my perception may not be fair, but my perception is Neither previous councils nor the current one have treated this role with urgency or the seriousness it deserves. We need a seasoned, forward-thinking professional, someone that has the vision and ability to shape and execute strategic economic plans that will move Antioch forward. Economic development isn't a luxury in Antioch right now. It's really a necessity, and for a future-ready city with possibly less Chipotles. Since we're going back in the past, and with all due respect to prior council, I mean, I go to a lot of meetings, and I've seen community members come up, and in the past, you brought up the past, I'm bringing up the past, where community members came up and talked about the deficit. You two remained silent, while our former mayor said, we do not have a deficit. Looks like the bloggers were right on that one. But looking ahead, I think we should just strive for greater accountability, responsibility, and the place to begin is honest reflection of our own past decisions.
Time's up.
Oh my gosh, I just want to thank everyone for the hard work too.
Next speaker is Corey Johnson, followed by Warren and Todd.
All right, good evening, City Council. My name is Corey Johnston, and I've been a resident in Antioch for 12 years now. I'm also proud to say that I'm also an employee for the city that I live in and the city that my 3 young kids will grow up in. I have the honor of working at the water treatment plant and have worked there since July of 2022. When I first started there, we had a very skeletal crew. We had an operator that had to work 31 12-hour shifts out of 33 days due to lack of staffing because we had no coverage for sick calls and vacations. Due to recent staffing efforts in the last 2 years and being only 3 vacancies away from being fully staffed, instances like this do not happen anymore. So reading these proposals affects me not just one way, but 2. Not only is it a possibility that I will take a cut in pay, but the town I call home will lose its care that it was starting to develop. Hearing that playground repairs will not occur, preventative tree maintenance will not occur, sign repairs will not occur, vandalism and accident repairs will not be able to be made, and so on, this makes me lose pride in my city. It is known that we don't make as much as neighboring cities around here, but I choose to work here because I care about my city. We've had a lot of negative appearances in the press lately, and I would hate for this to get out there because that's also going to be a really bad look for us. I know times are tough, but I do hope you consider the livelihoods of us employees and residents that live here. And also a weird week, but to all my fellow brothers and sisters, happy Public Works Week. You are appreciated, and I do love every one of you guys, so thank you.
Next speaker is Warren, followed by Todd.
Good evening. My name is Warren Spahn, and I am a water distribution operator for the city of Antioch. I also call this city my home. I have been employed by the city for almost 7 years. That being said, I wanted to share my thoughts and feelings about the situation the water department is facing. As a water distribution operators, we are essential to the city. An essential worker is someone without whose work society cannot function properly. A society cannot function properly without water, wouldn't we all agree? To make it short, we are responsible for keeping water in the pipes. So every time you turn on your faucet, hose spigot, need to put a fire out, etc., the list goes on, the water is freely available. Not only are we essential workers, but we are also emergency workers. We are responsible for answering the call 24/7, 365. Our water system supplies homes, hospitals, schools, parks, landscapes, let's just say every single thing. And if by chance a water main blows or even a single designated line to a home or a school is disrupted, who must answer the call to repair that line to the main no matter what time or what day? We do. Who calls us at night for an emergency repair? Dispatch. The same people responsible for dispatching police to other emergencies. And guess who calls dispatch? Concerned residents of Antioch. It is our responsibility to keep the public safe on the roads and in our water pipes, as well as keeping us safe in this fast-paced world. We have many other responsibilities, but I only have 3 minutes. To conclude, this will be detrimental to our productivity, to our staff, and to the taxpayers of this city. We ask that you don't treat us as if we don't matter, because that's how it feels. The city needs us to wash our hands, to clean our dishes, to bathe, to hydrate, to while other plants which could serve as their food source to fight fires to survive. As a resident and employee, it does not make sense that the water rates have been increased, but the service and wages are going to be cut. Thank you.
Next speaker is Todd Northam.
Good evening, council. My name's Todd Northam, for anybody that doesn't know, and I'm a longtime employee, one that survived the last round of that we went through many moons ago. I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to bring up, but I'm throwing it out, and I'm just going to shoot from the hip. They were specifics. Now, we would like to get specific with you, and we'd like the people at the bottom that know things and would like to be considered into the formula of how to solve the city's problems. Now, one of the things we need to do is learn from the past. Now, in the past, we were in furlough for 5 years plus. We were taking a 20% cut, plus our COLAs, of which we were never made whole again on our COLAs or anything. Now, I talked to Ron when he came into office, and his idea on it is this is something we needed to talk about in negotiations. Now, why would we need to negotiate the city doing something right, doing the honorable thing and making us whole? Why should we have to negotiate that? The same thing, we are so understaffed and behind, we aren't even really getting maintenance done anymore. We're just replacing things and hiring contractors to do work. That's not how you save money. Do you not change the oil in your car and then drive the motor into the ground, put a new motor in, and think you're saving money? That's what you're doing to the city. You can't just keep driving it. You're going to have to spend some money to save some money. That means you got to keep the people happy to work here. The people are not the problem. It's the programs that are the problem. Now, I know you'd like to think you're coming off all honorable. You're taking a cut too. You guys are volunteers. We're feeding our families with this, okay? If you are feeding your families with what you're doing, then something's wrong because you're volunteers. You know, you're doing the honorable thing and doing that, but, you know, the cut you're taking is meaningless. We're feeding our families with this. One of the biggest problems the city has is culture. Everything is about a short-term solution. We need a long-term solution. We need some leadership. We need to, you know, we keep doing the same stuff, put a happy face on it, and think that's going to change things. It's going to take more than that. I don't know what else I could add to that. We do have specifics. I'd like to be your Elon. I didn't bring my chainsaw, but, you know, talk to me. Okay, thank you.
That concludes all of the speaker cards that I had.
All right, thank you. So you all have direction, council, or not council, but staff? Yes?
I have some comments. So some things that residents reached out to me about related to the city's expenditures over the last fiscal year, that they weren't sure if it was already presented, but it would be good to get some clarity. Encampment enforcement. So how much over the last fiscal year has the city spent on encampment enforcement? How much has the city of Antioch spent on case settlements? So settling cases, I know we have insurance, but we do own at least $50,000 of the coverage on every case settled. So how many cases have been settled in the last fiscal year, related to which department, and the total amount? Overtime costs. So I know we have in the past discussed overtime, the cost of overtime in the police department without actually discussing the overtime costs overall city departments over the last fiscal year. Community member reached out to me about that, and overtime was mentioned here tonight. But we often keep our conversations relegated to the police department, so it would be nice to know overtime across every department. And maybe this already happened, but a breakdown of how ARPA dollars were spent in the city overall. So not just pilot projects that have showed promise and actually brought $6 million to the city, but overall how those monies were spent, because not all the ARPA dollars could be spent on community resources or programs. I know a portion of ARPA had to be spent in other ways, and I think people are asking for clarity around that. What else do I have here? And as far, I also just want to say that I think we all definitely want to be involved in the conversation, especially when it has to do with how it's going to impact your family. And, you know, to be honest, just because I don't know any other way to be, this conversation was not finna happen in public. This conversation was finna happen a week ago in closed session without any of y'all. Myself and Councilmember Freitas pushed back, and so we didn't have that conversation in closed session, because we knew it was important to have it transparently and in public. And it is unfortunate that you all and your bargaining units and all of the workers in the city didn't have a chance to even look at this or have a say-so. And because we said that the goal was transparency, the idea that we would even try to have this conversation in private just didn't sit right with me. So I'm glad y'all did show up and let y'all voices be heard, because you do deserve to be at the table. But that day you weren't considered. Because I do appreciate Melissa a lot, because we've gotten to know each other. I don't get my news from opinion papers that are anti-Black and homophobic. What I do know is to call highly qualified individuals with different levels of education up here on this dais illiterate is absolutely unacceptable. To make public claims that city staff and city council haven't been transparent in staff reports is just not true. City staff, since I've been here, have always been transparent in staff reports. This has never been an issue of transparency. This has been an issue of engagement. Councilmember Freitas came in and asked, I don't want to say to dummy down the staff reports, to make it more palatable so residents will be able to understand what they're reading and digesting. Will we call that illiterate? Or will we call that creating opportunities for people to fully engage at the level of their understanding? And then we also know that what is considered healthy for a city is revenues, right? And so every fiscal year we have a projection of revenues, we have a projected deficit, and every year since I've been here, the Budget Stabilization Fund has not failed below 30%. So I appreciate having a city manager now who is willing to dive deep with city staff to explain all of this to us and how we got here. And I can't speak for the former mayor because I will not, but based on the fact that revenues had been stable, the fact that the Budget Stabilization Fund never went under 30%, could have been potentially what he was talking about, but I can't speak for him. And I think that we need to consider that everybody matters when we having these conversations, and to try to drag people in public as if we aren't running organizations and don't know what it means to have budget conversations that center the needs of our community is beyond my belief. And so we can keep cutting from the bottom, and we can keep taking from staff, and we can keep taking from the public until it's just us left.
I just have a couple of comments, not as, it's kind of hard to go after Councilmember Torres Walker, but first and foremost, thank you for everybody that came out today. I apologize to the bargaining units for not including you in this conversation when you guys are very much a part of this conversation and how much it impacts you in your lives. Todd, I was around, remember I first got elected, the city was on furloughs. And at that time, I remember morale was low. Public service that was community facing was low, and Antioch was known as the city that was closed on Fridays. We definitely didn't want to go back to that, and that was one thing when I first got elected, hey, get us off furloughs, and we got off those furloughs, and now we're back here again. I'm not for furloughs, I'm not gonna vote for that, and so we're gonna do whatever we can to protect that. Couple good points were brought up around retention. We definitely need to invest more in how we retain, and how do we best incentivize you guys. What can we do to empower you, support you, and make sure you're at your best and top at your job? And how do we get you promoted to the next level? Those are things that we need to focus on. That was something I heard today. Definitely long-term solutions. We definitely need to think long-term. I think somebody put it really poignant earlier today about we need to stop doing Band-Aid solutions and figure out how do we take care of the city as a whole. But I just wanted to say thank you. It thrilled my heart when I walked in and saw all you guys here and making sure that your voices were here. So thank you. We're definitely going to take you. All of us are definitely going to take you into account in making sure you're part of this conversation as we go through this budget. This is the first of conversations. We definitely need to hear from you. We need to keep hearing from us. Email us, call us, so you're definitely stay a part of the conversation. Thank you.
I have a problem with those buttons. I was born here, raised here, schooled here, and I've had the honor of serving the community on the Contra Costa Water District for 16 years, as a council member and mayor for 8 years, and to be reelected. And you learn a lot. And the one thing that you learn is that the electeds, if things are going well, get all the attention. Things are going bad, it's the employees. But the fact of the matter is, it's the employees who make the city successful. And, former city manager Jim Jekyll said, public service is a noble profession. It is. It is a noble profession. We work very hard for the salaries and benefits for ourselves and our families, and we sacrifice a lot. Every one of you in this room. We sacrifice a lot. For who? For everybody else in this room and in this community. And so one of the things that disturbed me greatly in the last 4 years was the ugly division that existed in our community. And on November 5, something that rarely happens is a new majority was elected to council. And what I heard time and time and time again, we have hope. And I think that things are turning around. People are not coming up to me just complaining. People are coming up to me excited. People used to come and say, I can't take it anymore, Don, I'm moving. And so many good community people, volunteers, leaders, left this community. I wasn't one of them, because And I worked this out with my wife. I said, honey, I love you, but I'm going to die here. And it's because I love this community as each and every one of you do. This is a partnership. Now, I have to tell you, a $54 million deficit is a crisis. And we are trying desperately to get out of the crisis, not only for today, but in the future, so that we can build, we can expand. For people to say, I'm from Antioch, and I'm proud to be from Antioch. And so this relationship is important. Don't remain silent. You all have access to each one of us. So you can call us. We will meet with you. We will have discussions. And I hope that the city manager will take it upon herself to meet with the unions and have that discussion. Because I learned working for Contra Costa County Public Works Department for 33 years in HR and as the manager of the Contra Costa Clean Water Program, solutions came from the employees. I didn't ask the managers and supervisors. I asked the employees who every day they're out there toiling. They're always the one who have the knowledge, the experience, the know-how, and the recommendation. This is a family. Sometimes it feels a little crazy and disjointed, but we are a family and we're all on the same page, or should be on the same page. This is a new direction, and it's going to take us a while to get out of this mess. It is. So I think this mayor and this council and this staff, I believe that we want to meet you more than halfway. We want to be embraced and move together. We're going to have differences of opinion. I mean, I disagreed with the mayor tonight. It's okay to have disagreements. Something happened to civility. You know, nowadays, if you disagree, I sometimes get nervous that the person's going to pull out a gun and shoot me. You know, that's not the way it used to be. And so I am very happy that we had this meeting. I'm very happy that it's transparent. But the burden is on all of us. We're all in this together. We all have one common denominator. We want to succeed. So the mayor, the council, the staff, and you, the employees, and the community need to come together. I know I got criticized for this. The past is the past. Let's learn from it, but let's stop dredging up all the ugliness and negativity again and again and again. The question for us is, what is in the best interest of Antioch? That's really the question. Once you have the facts, once you have the figures, you ask yourself one question. What is in our best interest collectively, not individually? So I think this was a very important dialogue. I hope it continues. And instead of criticizing, reach out. Have a discussion, and let us all move forward, please. Thank you.
All right, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight on short notice. I thank you for your comments. They're important. Just let you all know, this is I think our 10th or 11th council study session. We've gone through all the different departments. This is really, we had one on the general fund before. This is really the first real discussion we're having now, kind of pulling everything together. We have one more meeting in a week or so to go over the city manager's budget and the CIP, and then we'll have everything concluded so we have the full picture. And the reason that we put staff and everybody through 10 of these, because it's brutal, right? I mean, everybody has jobs to do, but they have to pull together budgets and explain what they're doing, is because we wanted the city council to understand what is going on in the city. We wanted the city departments to know what's going on in the city, because oftentimes we'll just take an old budget and just regurgitate it and bump it at 5% and call it a day. And that's not what happened here. So, and the reason that was so important is because we do have, and it's been stated many times, we do have a challenge balancing our budget. And going to a one-year budget will allow us to be able to do that in a way that's real time, and we can watch it together as we're going along with monthly updates. We can see what our revenues are doing, we can see what our staffing is doing, and then we can make sure that we do stay on the same page and we don't have to have what appears to be a surprise meeting. And so we still have 6 weeks left or so to adopt our budget, but we do need to start bringing it to some conclusion. So I look forward to working with everybody in this room that wants to participate and be a part of that. Your department heads have worked really hard on this, the city manager, the finance director. This is a really heavy lift. We've had more special meetings probably than we ever have had before, and that takes a lot of time and it causes a lot of brain damage on Wednesday mornings, but it's necessary for us to make sure that we're making the best decisions possible. So I just want to say thank you, and I want to let you know that our goal is to do this together as a city council. You know, one of my hopes for our city council is that we all work together as a team, because we all represent different values, different parts of our city, and we just want to make sure that we're doing our jobs to make sure that our constituents are heard, and then make sure that we're doing what's best for the whole city. So again, I just want to let you know that you taking your time out today until almost 8 o'clock at night hasn't been a waste of time. It's been very valuable to us. So thank you very much. Thank you for, oftentimes people feel intimidated coming up and speaking in front of the microphone. And I hope you all know that any of you are welcome, and this is a safe place. Whether we set this up on purpose here at ground level and at Nick Rodriguez, as opposed to having it at the council chambers, because we wanted it to be a discussion where you're up there talking to us, down to us in this case, not talking up to us. So this is the way we wanted to have this discussion, to make sure that everybody felt like they were heard and felt more comfortable coming forward and giving your input. So I just want to let you know, whether it's meetings here or in a council chamber, please come forward, please give your input. It's valuable, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it. So thank you very much. With that, if we don't have anything else, meeting's adjourned.
It is 7:50 p.m.